What's up everybody, D-Man back. Welcome to a brand new video, and today we are going to be unboxing and reviewing Playmates' new Giant Kong with Beast Glove. This is from Godzilla X Kong: The New Empire, and it is the big boy that Playmates released for Kong. Oof, I had quite the realization before I got into this review. Jumping ahead in the figure comparison section, we're going to be talking about this bad boy in relation to this guy. The fact that that happened 19 years ago that figure was released, it's slowly setting in for me. That's quite shocking. But for now, let's talk about this brand new bad boy, the Kong with the Beast Glove. This is basically just a big version of the other Kong, so if you haven't seen my review for the little one, go check out my review for the little Kong. I actually feel like I'll probably have a bit more to say in that video than I will in this one, simply because it's basically the same exact figure. I really like the new box arts for these Godzilla X Kong figures, as I've mentioned in the previous videos. I really like the color palette, the crystals, and everything like that. The renders of Godzilla and Kong are great. The side is the crystals. This side is that Godzilla and Kong render. On the back is this nice one with Kong, and it's all green like he's in the Hollow Earth. It looks really cool. And on the bottom, you've got a warning to also look for the giant evolved Godzilla and the giant Scar King. That giant Scar King is so elusive. I have not even found a trace of him out there. But we can talk about this Kong, so let's just get the boy out and get into it. Hey, I just want to shout out Playmates really fast for going with these new biodegradable zip ties. Very cool, Playmates. That's actually a great thing you're doing. Wow, I was immediately taken off guard by all those freaking screw holes in his back, and by the fact that he's got a really solid range of articulation right out of the box. Look at that. Wow, that's really cool. Obviously, that's a huge thing that I look for in these toys, because when I was a kid, it would drive me freaking crazy when the Kongs and the Godzillas and whatever toy I was playing with had really stiff fixed positions, because like, what if I wanted him to do big punches, or what if I wanted him to do a big jump? What if I wanted him to throw his arms over his head and do a ground pound? Well, it got really difficult when the figures had these really stiff fixed positions. Even when it's limited, at least it makes sense. His arm can't break this position because he's obviously wearing this big gauntlet that's fixed his arm into its position. I think this is a very cool toy. If you're looking for a figure for a kid, this is going to be great, or if you're looking to pick it up yourself, I'm pretty satisfied with this thing immediately. The sculpt overall is basically the same exact sculpt as the smaller Kong, and I hesitate to say it's the exact same one because there are incredibly subtle differences. Like, remember how there's these weird lines cutting into Kong's arm, like almost that looked like they were going to maybe paint them bloody in a later variant? There was one on his leg too. Well, this doesn't have those. Also, some of the fur goes in different directions on this big guy than it does on the little one. I do think it probably could have had a little more depth to it. As always, the Playmate sculpts are very shallow, especially on like the shoulders here. It just gets really smooth, and when he lifts his arm, it's really smooth. But I appreciate things like the legs having a lot of that fur texturing, the back having all the fur layers. That's really good. I also like that it's still got the defined muscle textures. That's looking great. I really like the face on this figure. I think it's very cool. It's a great roaring pose. It does a good job accentuating the beard on his chin and how it's grown bigger. While still, just like the smaller one, it doesn't 100% capture the likeness of Kong from the movie. It's doing a better job capturing the likeness of the MonsterVerse Kong than the previous Playmates Kong releases. And I like the way that they've given Kong a bigger chest here. That was an issue that they always had in the past. Of course, with these bigger figures, oftentimes you have these empty feet. I don't know why they do that. I don't know if it helps balance the figure or what the logic is, but that drives me crazy. But other than that, I'm pretty happy with it. Obviously, the major selling point on this is the Beast Glove, and ironically, I think that the Beast Glove looks a little more impressive on the smaller figure because for some reason, whether it's the shade of yellow they've chosen or that it's legitimately a thicker, deeper sculpt, it looks more detailed. It still holds up when you get up close to it. It doesn't have the same cool factor that the smaller one did. However, there are some areas that look a lot better, like these gears and these bands on the bottom. As far as the paint job is concerned, this is some pretty standard King Kong Playmate stuff. They've gone with a very matte, dark brown, almost blackish look for Kong's fur, but then they have added these highlights. So on his hands, his fingers, and his palms, he's got got these brighter colors. His face obviously has a brighter color. His chest has a brighter color. You see it on this hand as well, and then it bleeds into the feet. The face is pretty well painted with the eyes looking great. They're actually looking in the right direction, unlike the little Kong. I like the orange paint for those. The teeth look pretty good with them being white, although mine do feature a lot of paint chipping. The mouth being all pink with the tongue being sculpted inside is pretty solid. That looks good. I like the chest scars a lot. I don't like the new placement of the scars Godzilla has left on Kong's chest. I prefer to the way they looked in Godzilla vs. Kong at the end of that movie, but I think that that's because they've literally changed the design for the movie, so I can't fault the figure that much. And then the beast glove looks pretty solid. The yellow is looking very good. I liked the shade of yellow more on the smaller one. I really appreciate that they've actually painted the underneaths of Kong's gauntlet, that you have these metal straps. I couldn't have even told you they were metal on the small one. The gear's looking great. I really like that this piece is painted with this metal part. And overall, they've even done some things like painting in the buckles on Kong's arm. These are all things I would expect them to do, but that they didn't do on the smaller figure, so I want to praise the fact that they did that here. As far as articulation goes, you've got 1 joint, 2 joints, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Then because of this, there's no other ones on this arm, and then 15. So I think double joints are counted separate a lot of the times. I don't normally count them separate. If I wasn't counting them separate, we'd be looking at 9 points of articulation, which is still pretty solid for these kind of Playmates Godzilla Kong figures. That's pretty decent. And you've got a really good range with him. It does feel like that hard plastic that's going to explode if dropped, but on the whole, I'm pretty satisfied with this figure. I think it's very cool. Getting into the Kong comparisons, here's Kong with the little one. I just think it looks a little cooler, although I like that they've actually taken the time to paint the additional details on the big one. The smaller Kong also features more articulation, with the most notable piece being that the beast glove itself can rotate at the elbow, whereas it can't on the big one. But other than that, they are nearly identical figures. I think the only thing that really stands out to me is that I liked the chest color being darker on the little one, and I think it makes the scars stand out even more. Other than that, they're almost identical figures. If you want a big one, just get the big one, or if you want a small one, get the small one. It's not a matter of quality versus quality, which one's the better toy, because they're both pretty solid and they both do their jobs very well. I did want to compare just for a second the Kong to the old Kong, just because I wanted to see how they stacked up next to each other. This is Playmates Kong from 2005, same brand nearly 20 years later. The 2005 one obviously had a roaring gimmick, but I really think they've taken a lot of steps to try to start capturing their former glory again. The old Kong's still the superior figure. It had a better paint job. The sculpt is a little cooler, but the new one has better articulation, which is neat, and I think they have taken some steps to try and recapture their former glory, because of course when they started their Godzilla vs. Kong line, those figures just weren't living up to the level that they should have. Here is their Giant Kong, the initial Kong that launched that GVK line. He's a little smaller and a little less impressive, featuring a lot less articulation, a much worse paint job. In every single way, I feel like Playmates has made improvements from Godzilla vs. Kong to Godzilla X Kong, so I want to give that a shout out. At least here it makes sense why the paint job's a little more dull, whereas here it was like, why is he black? Kong is literally brown in the movie Godzilla vs. Kong. This made no sense even back then. Playmates eventually rectified that with their Giant Kong that was the battle roaring one. This one is awesome. I think it's still a much cooler figure that looks much more like the Kong from the movie than even their new one, but they have made articulation improvements to the new figure, and so I do give a shout out to that. But it is cool to see these guys next to each other, and it is fun that the gimmicky GVK one is the bigger one. I'm fine with that. I hope that they do a giant battle roaring Kong as well for Godzilla X Kong. That'd be sick to have the two side by side. And then finally, here's the Playmates Godzilla 2021 standing off against Kong. Always got to beat the snot out of them. They look awesome together. Look at those guys. That is a great matchup. These two figures look fantastic together. I'm excited to get out the new Giant Godzilla Evolved version so that we can have a proper Godzilla X Kong showdown. But until then, that's a pretty good pairing. It's much better than pairing this Godzilla with his own Godzilla vs. Kong, because that one's awful. If I had to rate this figure, I think I'd give it an 8 out of 10. I think it's pretty solid. There's not a ton of other stuff I would have done to make it better, maybe giving him that joint at the elbow again, and just little things like picking different shades of the colors they've picked. Plus, there's no reason that there's not a joint in the mouth to make it open and close. If the giant battle roaring Kong could have that, then this guy could have that too. Pretty solid figure. I think it's probably worth the price. I think this thing was like 25 bucks at Target, but I do know that this guy sells for even more, up to like $50 online, so definitely avoid that. It's not worth that. I would spend no more than $30 on it. 30 is pushing it too, because it doesn't come with any accessories, so it's kind of weighing your costs and benefits here. All right, I want to give a huge thank you to my Patreon patrons over on Patreon. If you want to support the Patreon, you can use the link in the description below. Thank you guys so much for the support over there. It is through the support of the Patreon that I'm able to keep making videos like this for you guys. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I will see you guys next time for the next one. D-Man out.